was in order, especially because of the Merriam Report. We have to mention Merriam Report because one of the federal workers actually went to one of the reservations on which the Indians lived, and somehow, as if it wasn't known to them before, this person found out about the really terrible conditions in which Native Americans lived on those reservations. And these are the problems that are prominent even now, which is drug and alcohol addiction, food shortage. They really have to travel today huge distances to get food. So that really shocked everyone. The results of this report really shocked everyone, and Roosevelt thought that certain laws had to be given back to the Indians. So for instance, the Indians were given back their, let's say, criminal jurisdiction. Formal tribal government was to be again restored. However, the thing is that the Indians were by this time very suspicious towards what the Americans were up to, let's say. So when the time came for the ratification of this whole pack of new government rules, which was called Indian Reorganization Act, out of 187 tribes, 71 rejected it because, well, I suppose they were really afraid of what was going to happen. So let's say some of the laws were put into force and started working, but some didn't. That's why I suppose the Indian Reorganization Act wasn't really as effective as it was set out to be initially. And we're getting closer now to Alcatraz. Termination policy now. So here we have the context of the Second World War, after which U.S. economy emerged as quite significantly weakened. So they thought that they had to resort to budget changes, budget cuts to be more exact. So they thought that a termination would mean complete termination of any laws concerning Native Americans, so that they would become fully, let's say, incorporated into the society. So for instance, Indian schools were to become included in this national education program, for instance. However, if you think that the word termination means that they finally left Indians alone, that's really far from truth, because they terminated, let's say, everything. They abrogated tribes as they were, without the tribes' consent, really. And they really terminated. They terminated a lot of reservations too. So they thought that without those, let's say, any kind of government support, the Indians would somehow be much eager and much more friendly towards the mainstream society of America. However, obviously, it didn't work. Here we arrive at the final phase, which lasts until this day, and that is called self-determination. So here, self-determination started with the presidency of President Richard Nixon, the one of the Watergate scandal, and Nixon was known to have a soft spot for Indians because he supposedly had an Indian coach back at school. So he really somehow supported, let's say, to a certain extent, the Indians, and he thought that he introduced several changes, which is that Native Americans could now purchase or develop lands and facilities for industrial and commercial use, which was very beneficial because it meant that the Indians could, they could start their own businesses and become independent. And therefore thrive and become successful in the mainstream society. And another important thing, especially in the context of Alcatraz, which is there was those massive migrations to the cities of the Indians. So in order to improve their situation, the Indians moved to the cities, to the metropoli. However, it did not bring about necessarily as successful an effect as people suspected. Some of the Indians, of course, some of the Indians adopted very well to this urban way of life. However, some of them did not because they fell into depression, for instance, It's because this very hectic style of life, as we know, that resides in urban cities. And for instance, Indians have a really different perception of time. So for the first day, let's say, they showed for work, and again they showed for work the next time. However, let's say a week passed and they didn't show up for work, simply because they didn't comprehend it in their minds, this idea that they needed to be punctual. You know, I read a statement of one of the Indians who said that, well, it really drove him crazy that he had to be controlled by time all the time. So again, some of the people really became stimulated and really became successful and rich, as it were, and they could grant themselves a really decent living and start families in big cities. But like I said, some moved from the poverty of the reservation to the poverty of the big cities. So at this time, let's say, we're talking now 1960s of the General Republic. Because all those problems were really not known that well to the general public. So that's as much as right. And he, in 1969, he enrolled in the San Francisco State College, and he persuaded his friends to join the college's Native American Studies program. So he already tried to initiate and introduce certain changes. So that's Elk. So he was the most, let's say, he gave the greatest amount of interviews. He was in the spotlight. That's the news really concentrated on him. So we can say that he was the main leader. But the other guy was also quite important, Adam Nordwall. Nordwall was really, maybe I'll write it down again. Right, so Adam Nordwall was a perfect example of a successful product of the termination policy, because he started working, he became really successful, a really successful businessman. He lived in San Francisco, on the suburbs of San Francisco with his family, and he really took it upon himself to help all the newcomers who really naturally kept coming from the reservations, to help them in this cultural shock that they experienced when they came to the big cities. And he established something that's going to be important for us, United Bay Area Council of American Indian Affairs, which really was, I think, devoted to helping all those people in, like I say, trying to somehow overcome this shock that they experienced. So that is how these people got to know their fellow Indians, and that is how I think they became inspired to become the leaders and to bring about certain changes, like I say, in the general awareness. So we have the leaders, and now we need to have the location. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Alcatraz, the rock, which was actually closed in 1962 because of high maintenance costs and of constantly decaying conditions. Although there was a story circulating that someone actually managed to. Some people wanted to build restaurants. There was even an idea of building a museum of space exploration there. So when it was closed, Adam Nordwall and his organization that he established, he came up with the idea because there was an old treaty provision that promised surplus or abandoned land of federal property that could be taken by Indians. So what Alcatraz was, it was an abandoned federal property, which gave them really legitimate claim for the Indians to claim it and somehow to claim title to it. So Nordwall proposed to buy the land for 47 cents per acre, which was exactly the same amount of money that the white settlers proposed to the California Indians, let's say 200 years ago when they were buying out the land. However, of course, he didn't buy the land, and the lawsuits to purchase never really materialized. But it wasn't really Nordwall's aim. His aim was to bring people's and media coverage that the Indians were somehow having this idea to appropriate Alcatraz to their own purposes. What is really unique about Alcatraz? is that it was very popular in the media. I mean, there were huge hordes of journalists going, and once the occupation started, there were really hordes of journalists going there, and there were constant updates about what's happening, and like I say, Oaks gave a lot of interviews. So the interest was great. That's how I think it gained so much prominence and interest from the side of even the society. So we just have to imagine ourselves Alcatraz looming somewhere there in the distance, looking very, very, very intrepid. So I think it was the vision for Oaks and Lord War that they became. I think it's fair to say that they became really obsessed with it. That they wanted to create some sort of a symbol of it. Right, I have more pictures. Maybe this one or this one. Yeah, there's lots of tourists because today you can visit Alcatraz. So they started to make plans and they started to organize the occupation. We're talking now October of 1969, and there was an event that ultimately pushed them to start the occupation, and that there was a San Francisco Indian Center, and it was a very important place for the Indians because they could go there whenever they needed help, and there was a fire for unknown reasons, and it burned to the ground. So there was great anger and again despair that the Indians had no place for their own, nothing they could.
This island here represents no man's land and every man's land. Represents to the Indians a place, a sounding board where they can get the attention of the public, get the attention of the press, and get the attention of government officials.
Within the first year of our planning, for the first 4 months, we will finalize the funding angles.
This island is in the foulest weather spot of the Bay Area. It's always a few degrees colder, or windier, or foggier than any place else. Just a place for a park.
Something that we're trying to do. We're trying to hang on to our culture, to our religion, to be Indians.